I walked out to my driveway that Tuesday morning, coffee in hand, ready for another day at work. But something felt wrong. The spot where my red 2010 Honda Civic always sat was empty. Just oil stains on the concrete, and my own confused reflection in the garage door window. My heart started beating faster. I checked my phone, no messages about towing or repairs. I walked around the house twice, thinking maybe I had parked somewhere else and forgotten. But I knew better. That car never left that spot unless I was driving it. I called my sister Amber, who lived in the small house on our family's land about 10 minutes away. She always had spare keys to everything. Dad had insisted on it before he died 3 years ago. "Hey, have you seen my car?" I asked when she picked up. There was a pause. Too long of a pause. "What do you mean?" "My car is gone, Amber. It's not in my driveway." Another pause. I can explain everything, Casey. Just come over, okay?" The way she said my name made my stomach drop. Something was very wrong. I borrowed my neighbor's car and drove to Amber's place, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The small white house sat at the back of our family's 5-acre property, surrounded by oak trees Dad had planted when we were kids. Amber was waiting on the porch, pacing back and forth like she always did when she was nervous. Her blonde hair was messy, and she was still in her pajamas even though it was almost noon. "Where's my car, Amber?" I asked before I even got out of the borrowed car. She wrung her hands together. "Okay, don't freak out, but I had to do something. I was in trouble, real trouble, and I needed money fast." My heart sank. "Tell me you didn't sell my car." "It's temporary," she said quickly. "I'm going to buy it back as soon as I can. I just needed to pay off this debt, and you know how much that car is worth. It's in perfect condition." I stared at her. "You sold my car without asking me?" "I have your spare keys, and I forged the title." "I'm sorry, Casey, but I was desperate." I felt like the ground was spinning under my feet. That car wasn't just transportation. It was the last gift Dad had given me before the cancer took him. He had saved for months to buy it, saying every woman needed reliable wheels and independence. "Who did you sell it to?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Some guy from the next town over. He paid cash, $15,000. I already used the money to pay off what I owed." $15,000. My car was worth at least $18,000, but she had probably been desperate enough to take the first offer. "Amber, that car meant everything to me. Dad gave me that car." I know, but I was going to lose everything if I didn't pay Blake back. He was threatening me, Casey. I was scared. Blake. I should have known. Blake Stevens was a local guy who lent money to people who couldn't get bank loans. Everyone knew he charged crazy interest rates and wasn't patient about getting paid back. "How much did you owe him?" $22,000. I almost fell over. $22,000? For what? Amber looked down at her feet. "I borrowed some money last year to start that online business, remember? The one selling handmade jewelry? It didn't work out like I planned." I remembered. She had been so excited about it, talking about becoming her own boss and making tons of money. I had even offered to help her create a business plan, but she said she had it all figured out. "So you borrowed $22,000 from Blake Stevens without telling me?" I thought I could pay it back quickly. The business was supposed to take off. But then everything went wrong, and the interest kept adding up. He wanted his money by yesterday, or he said he'd take the house. This house. The house Dad had built for Mom before I was born. The house where Amber lived rent-free on the land that we both inherited equally when Dad died. "And you thought selling my car was the answer?" I didn't know what else to do. "You're always so busy with your accounting job, and I didn't want to bother you with my problems." That was typical Amber logic. Instead of asking for help, she just took what she needed and hoped for the best. I sat down on her porch steps, trying to process everything. My sister had stolen my car, forged my signature, and sold it to pay off a debt I didn't even know existed. "Casey, please say something," Amber said, sitting down next to me. "I'm trying to figure out if I should call the police or just scream." I said honestly, "Please don't call the police. I'll fix this, I promise. I'll get your car back somehow." "How? You just said you used all the money to pay Blake." I'll figure something out. I always do. That was the problem with Amber. She always figured something out, usually by getting someone else to clean up her mess. Growing up, it was always mom and dad. After they died, it became my job. I stood up and looked at her. This is different, Amber. This isn't some small mistake I can fix with money. You stole from me. I didn't steal. I borrowed. Without asking. That's stealing. She started crying then, big dramatic tears that she had used to get out of trouble since we were kids. But I wasn't a kid anymore, and I wasn't Dad. I drove back to my house in silence, my mind racing. $22,000 in debt. My car gone. My trust in my sister shattered. When I got home, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. As an accountant, I knew how to research financial records. If Amber had borrowed money from Blake Stevens, there would be paperwork somewhere. I started by looking up Blake Stevens' business. He operated something called Quick Cash Solutions and had been in business for about 5 years. His interest rates were legal but barely 30% annually, compounded monthly. If Amber had borrowed $22,000 and couldn't pay it back quickly, the interest would have been crushing. No wonder she was desperate. But that didn't excuse what she had done to me. I thought about Dad and what he would say about this situation. He had always been fair but firm. Actions have consequences, Casey, he used to tell me. Good actions bring good consequences. Bad actions bring bad consequences. Amber's bad action was stealing my car. What would be the appropriate consequence? Over the next few days, I did something I had never done before. I ignored Amber completely. She called me 15 times the first day. 23 times the second day. By the third day, she was sending text messages every hour. Please talk to me. I'm sorry. I'll make this right. Don't shut me out. But I needed time to think. I needed to figure out what to do next without her drama and tears clouding my judgment. I took some vacation days from work and spent them researching. I looked up everything I could find about our family's property, the house Amber lived in, and our legal rights as co-owners. What I found was interesting. When Dad died, he had left the 5 acres to both of us equally. But the house itself was only in Amber's name. Dad had signed it over to her when he got sick, saying she needed security more than I did. The land, however, belonged to both of us. 50-50. On Thursday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Casey Clark? A deep voice asked. Yes, who is this? This is Blake Stevens. I think we need to talk about your sister. My blood turned cold. What about her? She told me she was going to get the rest of the money from you. Said you were good for it. But she's been avoiding my calls since Monday. The rest of the money? I thought she paid you off. Blake laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. She paid me $15,000. She still owes me $12,000, plus interest and fees for being late. That brings it up to about $14,000 now. My sister had lied to me. Again. Mr. Stevens, I didn't know anything about this debt until a few days ago. And I'm not responsible for money my sister borrowed. Maybe not legally, he said. But family is family, right? And I know where she lives. Nice little house on some pretty land. Are you threatening her? I'm just saying it would be a shame if something happened to that property because of unpaid debts. After Blake hung up, I sat in my car in the work parking lot, shaking with anger. Not only had Amber stolen my car, but she had also told this dangerous man that I would pay her remaining debt. I drove straight to her house. She wasn't on the porch this time. I had to knock on the door. When she opened it, her eyes were red and puffy. Casey, I've been trying to call you. We need to talk. Now. I pushed past her into the small living room. Nothing had changed since Dad had built this house 20 years ago. Same brown couch, same wooden coffee table, same family photos on the walls. Blake Stevens called me, I said. Her face went white. What did he say? He said you still owe him $14,000. You lied to me, Amber. I didn't lie. I didn't tell you everything. You told him I would pay the rest. She sat down hard on the couch. I was desperate. I thought maybe you could help me out just this once. Just this once? Amber, I've been helping you out your whole life. I paid for your car insurance for 2 years after high school. I gave you money for Mom's funeral when you were broke. I've covered your rent 3 times. This is different, she said quietly. You're right. It is different. Because this time you didn't ask. You just took. I looked around the living room, remembering all the family dinners we had eaten here, all the Christmas mornings, all the times Dad had sat in his favorite chair reading the newspaper. I want you to explain to me exactly how this happened, I said. From the beginning. Amber took a shaky breath. Last year, I met this woman online who was making tons of money selling jewelry. She had this whole system, and she offered to teach me. But I needed money to buy supplies and inventory. So you went to Blake Stevens instead of asking me or getting a bank loan. Banks wouldn't loan me money. My credit is terrible because of that credit card problem I had a few years ago. And I didn't want to ask you because you're always telling me I need to be more responsible. So you borrowed $22,000 at 30% interest. I thought I'd make the money back in 6 months. But the business never took off. People weren't buying like I expected. And the interest kept growing. I did quick math in my head. With compound interest, her debt would have grown fast. When did you first think about selling my car? I asked. She looked down at her hands. About a month ago. Blake started calling every day. And then he showed up here one night. He wasn't mean or anything, but he made it clear that he wasn't going to wait much longer. And you decided that stealing from me was better than asking for help. I knew you'd say no. You're always telling me I need to solve my own problems. That hurt because it was partially true. I had gotten tired of rescuing Amber from every bad decision she made. But this was different. This was dangerous. Amber, Blake Stevens isn't just some guy who lends money. He's connected to some bad people. When people don't pay him back, bad things happen. I know that now. That's why I was so desperate. I stood up and walked to the window that looked out over our family's land. 5 acres of rolling hills and oak trees. Dad had been so proud of this property. I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Okay. Did you put this property up as collateral for the loan? The silence told me everything I needed to know. Answer me, Amber. Not exactly, she said in a small voice. What does not exactly mean? I signed some papers that said if I couldn't pay the money back, Blake could put a lien on the property. This property? The land Dad left us. I didn't think it would matter because I was going to pay him back. I turned around to face her. Do you understand what you've done? You've put our family's land at risk. The land Dad worked his whole life to pay for. I'm going to fix it. How? You don't have $14,000. You don't have any money at all. Your business failed, and now you've stolen and sold the only valuable thing I owned. She started crying again, but this time I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt something I had never felt toward my sister before. Real anger. Casey, please. Help me figure this out. We're family. Family doesn't steal from family. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. You have until the end of the week to come up with a plan to get my car back or pay me for it. And you need to handle your debt to Blake yourself. What if I can't? Then you'll face the consequences of your choices. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Dad and how disappointed he would be if he knew what was happening. He had worked 2 jobs for years to buy this land and build Amber's house. He had dreamed of passing something valuable down to his daughters. Now Amber had put it all at risk. I got up and made coffee, then sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. I needed to understand exactly what legal rights I had as a co-owner of the property. After reading for hours, I learned something important. As a 50% owner of the land, I had the right to sell my share without Amber's permission. If someone bought my half, Amber would become co-owners with a stranger. Or if I could prove that Amber had acted irresponsibly with the property, like using it as collateral without my permission, I might be able to force a complete sale. The more I thought about it, the more sense it made. If I sold my half of the land, I would get enough money to replace my car and have some left over. Amber would be forced to deal with her debt problem herself. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. Friday came and went without a word from Amber. So did Saturday and Sunday. On Monday morning, I called a real estate lawyer named Patricia Williams who specialized in property disputes. I need to understand my options, I told her during our phone consultation. After I explained the situation, Patricia was quiet for a moment. Legally, you have several options, she said finally. The cleanest would be to sell your 50% share to a third party. But that might be complicated because your sister lives on the property. What if she can't afford to buy me out? Then the new owner would become her neighbor, so to speak. Or they could potentially force a sale of the entire property if they wanted to develop it. I thought about that. Someone else owning half of our family land. Someone who might not care about its history or meaning. There's another option, Patricia continued. If you can prove your sister violated the terms of your joint ownership by using the property as collateral without your consent, you might be able to petition for a forced sale. What does that mean? The court would order the entire property to be sold, and you'd split the proceeds 50-50. That would give Amber money to pay off Blake and start over somewhere else. And it would give me enough money to replace my car and have something left for my future. I met with Patricia in person on Tuesday. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who had been practicing real estate law for 20 years. Your sister put you in a difficult position, she said after reviewing the documents I had brought. But you're not without options. She explained that the forced sale option would require filing a petition with the court and proving that Amber had breached her duties as a co-owner. The process would take several months and cost some money in legal fees. The faster option would be to sell your share privately, Patricia said. I know several investors who buy partial property interests. They're usually looking to eventually acquire the whole property, either by buying out the other owner or waiting for them to sell. How long would that take? If you're serious about selling, I could have offers within 2 weeks. I stared out her office window at the busy street below. 2 weeks to change everything. What would happen to my sister? That would depend on who buys your share and what their plans are. Some investors are patient and would be happy to let her continue living there as long as she pays rent. Others might want to develop the land and would pressure her to sell her half too. That evening, I drove out to the family property one more time. I parked where the dirt road ended and walked through the oak trees Dad had planted. The evening sun filtered through the leaves, and I could hear birds singing in the branches. This land held so many memories. Learning to ride my bike on the dirt paths. Building tree forts with Amber during summer vacations. Helping Dad plant vegetables in the garden behind the house. But memories don't pay debts or replace stolen cars. I walked up to Amber's house and knocked on the door. When she opened it, she looked surprised to see me. Casey, I was just about to call you. Really? It's been a week. I've been working on getting your car back. I found the guy who bought it, and I'm trying to negotiate with him. What are you offering him? You don't have any money. She bit her lip. I was hoping maybe you could loan me the money to buy it back, and I'd pay you in installments. I almost laughed. Amber, you stole my car to pay a debt you hid from me. And now you want me to loan you money to fix your mistake. I know how it sounds, but... No. Casey, please. I'm desperate here. I walked past her into the house and sat down on Dad's old couch. I've been thinking about this situation all week, I said. And I've made a decision. She sat down across from me looking nervous. I'm going to sell my half of this property. The color drained from her face. You can't do that. Actually, I can. I own 50% of this land, and I have the right to sell my share to whoever I want. But this is our family's land. Dad wanted us to keep it in the family. Dad also taught us to be responsible and honest. You've been neither. She started crying. Casey, if you sell your half, I'll lose everything. This house, this land, it's all I have. You should have thought about that before you stole my car. I'll get your car back. I promise. How? You don't have any money, and you still owe Blake Stevens $14,000. She didn't have an answer for that. I stood up and looked around the living room one more time. I've already talked to a lawyer. I can have offers on my half of the property within 2 weeks. Please don't do this. I'm sorry, Amber. But you made your choice when you decided to steal from me instead of asking for help. I left Amber crying on the couch and drove home. My phone started ringing before I even got to the main road. I didn't answer. By the time I got home, she had called 12 times and sent 6 text messages. I read them all but didn't respond. Please don't sell the land. I'm sorry about your car. We can work something out. Don't destroy our family over this. But she had already destroyed our family when she chose to steal from me. The next morning, I called Patricia Williams and told her I wanted to move forward with selling my share of the property. Are you sure about this? She asked. It's a big decision, and it will definitely impact your relationship with your sister. My sister impacted our relationship when she stole my car and lied to me about her debts. All right then. I'll start reaching out to potential buyers today. Within 3 days, Patricia called me back with news. I have 2 serious offers on your 50% share, she said. The first is from a developer who wants to eventually buy the whole property and build houses. He's offering $60,000. That was more than I had expected. The second offer is from a private investor who buys property as long-term investments. He's offering $55,000, but says he'd be willing to let your sister continue living there if she pays reasonable rent. I had to make a choice between forcing Amber out completely or giving her a chance to stay and pay rent. The smart financial decision was to take the higher offer from the developer. But something inside me wasn't ready to be that cruel. I want to talk to the private investor, I told Patricia. His name was Frank Rodriguez, and he owns several rental properties around the county. We met at a coffee shop on Friday afternoon. I understand this is a family situation, he said after Patricia had introduced us. I'm not interested in causing unnecessary drama. If your sister wants to stay and can pay $800 a month in rent, that works for me. $800 a month was reasonable for a house and 2.5 acres of land. What if she can't pay the rent? Then we'd have to discuss other options. But I'm not looking to kick anyone out immediately. I'm a long-term investor. I thought about it over the weekend. Frank seemed like a decent person, and $800 in monthly rent was something Amber could afford if she got a steady job. On Monday, I called Patricia and told her I wanted to accept Frank's offer. Are you going to tell your sister before we finalize the paperwork? She asked. Yes. She deserves to know what's coming. I drove out to Amber's house on Tuesday evening. She was in the garden behind the house, pulling weeds from the vegetable plot Dad had started years ago. We need to talk, I said. She stood up and brushed dirt off her hands. Are you going to sell the land? I already did. The paperwork will be final next week. She sat down hard on an old tree stump. I can't believe you're really doing this. I sold my half to a man named Frank Rodriguez. He's an investor who owns rental properties. So I'll have to pay rent to live in my own house? It's not your house anymore, Amber. Well, half of it isn't. Frank wants $800 a month, which is very reasonable. She was quiet for a long time, staring at the garden. I don't have $800 a month, she said finally. Then you'll need to get a job. I've been trying to find work, but it's hard. And I still owe Blake money. I sat down on another tree stump across from her. Amber, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really hear me. I'm not responsible for fixing your life. You're 30 years old. You need to figure this out yourself. But we're sisters. Sisters don't steal from each other. The sale went through the following Tuesday. Frank Rodriguez now owned 50% of our family's land, and I had a check for $55,000 in my bank account. I used $18,000 to buy a newer car, a 2015 Honda Civic that was even more reliable than the one Amber had stolen. I put the rest of the money into savings for my future. Amber had 2 weeks to come up with her first month's rent for Frank, plus a security deposit. She called me every day, begging for help. I just need enough money to get started, she said during one call. Once I find a job, I can pay you back. No. You have all that money from selling the land. You could help me and still have plenty left over. That money is going toward my future. The future I'm planning because I can't depend on family. She started crying on the phone. I made a mistake, Casey. One mistake. Does that mean you're going to punish me forever? This isn't punishment. This is you facing the consequences of your choices. I hung up and blocked her number. 2 weeks later, Patricia Williams called me with an update. Frank Rodriguez says your sister missed her rent payment, she said. He's being patient, but he wanted you to know. I wasn't surprised. Amber had probably spent the 2 weeks hoping I would change my mind and rescue her instead of looking for a job or figuring out how to pay Blake Stevens. What happens now? Frank has started the eviction process, but he's giving her 30 days to come up with the money. After that, she'll have to leave. 30 days. Amber had 30 days to figure out how to save herself. I thought about calling her, but I didn't. She had made her choices. Now she had to live with them. Instead, I focused on my new life. I loved my new car. I had money in savings for the first time in years. I wasn't constantly worrying about what trouble Amber was going to get into next. For the first time since Dad died, I felt free. 3 weeks later, I ran into Blake Stevens at the grocery store. I recognized him from photos I had found online during my research. "You're Casey Clark," he said, approaching me in the produce section. "Yes. I wanted to thank you." That surprised me. "For what?" "Your sister paid me off last week. All of it, plus interest and fees. Said she sold her half of some property." My heart sank. She sold her half of the land? That's what she said. Seemed pretty upset about it, but she had the money. I finished my shopping in a daze. When I got home, I called Frank Rodriguez. "Did Amber sell her half of the property?" I asked. "Yes, she approached me last week. Said she needed money quickly and wanted to know if I'd buy her half too. We closed yesterday." "How much did you pay her?" $50,000. It was a fair price considering she needed to sell fast. So Amber had given up her home and her half of our family's land to pay off her debt. She had chosen to sell everything rather than get a job, and tried to make things work. I tried calling Amber, but her phone was disconnected. I drove out to the house, but it was empty. Frank said she had taken her furniture, and left without saying where she was going. For a moment, I felt guilty. Maybe I should have helped her. Maybe I should have loaned her the money to pay Blake, and keep the land in the family. But then I remembered the morning I walked out to find my car gone. I remembered the lies, the forged signature, the months of debt she had hidden from me. I had offered to help Amber many times over the years. I had paid her bills, covered her mistakes, and listened to her promises to do better. But I had never taught her that actions have consequences. Maybe losing everything was the only way she would finally learn to be responsible for herself. A week later, I got a letter from her. No return address, postmarked from a city 3 hours away. "Dear Casey," it said. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I understand why you did what you did. I messed up, and I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I'm staying with a friend and looking for work. I won't ask you for anything ever again. I hope someday you can forgive me. Love, Amber." 6 months later, I was driving through town when I saw a familiar blonde woman working behind the counter at a small bakery. It was Amber, wearing an apron and taking orders from customers. She looked different. Thinner, maybe, but also more focused. She was smiling at an elderly customer, carefully boxing up a birthday cake. I thought about going in to talk to her, but I decided not to. She was working, taking care of herself, solving her own problems. That was what she needed to learn. As I drove home to my house, in my reliable car, with money in my savings account, I thought about Dad. He had always said that the hardest part of being a parent was knowing when to help, and when to let your children face their consequences. I wasn't Amber's parent, but I had been acting like one for years. Cleaning up her messes, paying her bills, making her problems disappear. Maybe the best thing I had ever done for my sister was to stop rescuing her, and let her rescue herself. The land was gone, and our relationship might never be the same. But for the first time in years, we were both taking care of ourselves. And maybe that was enough.